and sound, and I won't say sound the alarm like you're in a panic, but to awaken the rest of our brothers and sisters on this planet to our possibilities. And I think that's where so much of what we've seen is about tearing things down rather than building them up. And we have an opportunity to build one another up. This planet can, I say this loudly, it can support the billions of people that live here. No one arrived by accident, and anyone who believes that, I think, has missed the deeper meaning of this experience. And we have an opportunity. This generation is the generation that will decide whether or not we have a world that frees us to our higher possibilities and potentials, or continues to suppress us in really what is a scripted program. I mean, you're not watching the programs. We are the programs, and we can either change it by recognizing what we are and move forward. And I think that's really the challenge, and it's each of us overcoming our own anxieties and fears and worries and starting to step in with confidence, knowing, A, that we're not alone. There are, in fact, millions of people doing the same thing. And we don't have to wait for some formal organization to form. We're already standing in it. It was created long ago. It's the human race. And we need to rise to the potential that was given us as our birthright and claim it back and change the world around us. I mean, it's so easy, I know, to get lost in the fear and worry of the times we're facing economically, socially, technologically. But, we are at a crossroads, and everyone feels it and everyone knows it. And again, I want to emphasize there are no insignificant events. People need to step into what they believe to be right and true, begin acting responsibly, not with fear and worry, but with confidence, knowing that each step we take is a step in a different and a right direction.
Wow, Dr. Begich, so beautifully said, extremely profound. I think that's some of the most powerful things you've ever said on this broadcast, of many powerful broadcasts. I want to talk more about this awakening, and you can feel it, I can feel it, we can see it. The awakening is on, and the global controllers are throwing everything they can at us right now to try to suppress that awakening. Why are they so afraid of it? We'll ask the doctor on the other side. Okay, folks, Dr. Nick Begich will be with us about 15, 20 minutes in the next hour. We will take some calls for Dr. Nick Begich specifically on any questions you've got, but please call in for Dr. Nick Begich, 800-259-9231, 800-259-9231. Dr. Begich, we were talking during the break about the global social engineers. We know there's several different power blocks. And I know they know these secrets that we're discussing here, but they've made the conscious decision to do dehumanizing things so they greedily can control the future. And I was asking you, how can they know these great truths and consciously turn against those? How, when they tune in to what those of us that have discovered the larger scope of reality, how could they gaze upon this and the human potential and decide to engage in the type of activities they are?
Well, firstly, I'll tell you two things that are very telling in this. Is firstly, what all that research showed was that people have these capabilities latent within us. In fact, there's 2 studies being done by DARPA now in California for looking at methods for figuring out how telepathy works, mental telepathy, knowing what people think. Now, imagine yourself being in the New World Order crowd and the population knowing what you think. There's a lot of people with a lot of dark secrets that would prefer not to have them open in the light of day. And that's again, part of this fear is if people really had these potentials active in their lives on a regular basis, there would be no place to hide. We'd be laid bare. I mean, think about it. All of our sins, all of our good things that have happened in our life laid bare.
But that's already there, just people don't know how to recognize it. And I don't want to get off into this, but I've had many dreams that come true exactly. I constantly, it's just constant. And then most people just don't know how to recognize that it's already there, that we're already electromagnetically tied into everything.
Yeah, and the fact is, every once in a while we get little glimpses, and all of us have experienced that. We go, wow, that was really interesting. But here's what also is known, is that there's specific biological activity that is associated with those kinds of events. And this is where the science went in the 60s and 70s, is figuring out, hey, can we make someone else experience these same kinds of things? And as they discovered that everybody, every human has a natural capacity for these things, it scared the heck out of them. And then the question is, well, how do you control this kind of activity from breaking out, within populations where they can actually be free? You do it with fear and worry, because you really, I'm telling you, is if you look at this with scientific instruments to measure brain activity, you cannot, I repeat, you cannot reach higher states of consciousness as long as you are worried and fearful. And think back on your upbringing in terms of how people related to fear and how fear was used, and you really recognize how powerful it is, but how evil it is at the base to use that to motivate people rather than the logic and the good sense of good argument. And that's what's driving so much. And here's the other part of the problem, is the planners, military planners. In the military in the West, it's in a closet because they're not run by the military, they're run by the civilian sector. And the reason for that is military has to have this sort of paranoid mindset where they think of every horrible thing that could ever happen and then build a plan to safeguard the country. That's their job, and I don't begrudge them for it. In fact, I'm glad they're there doing that job. But because that thinking has to do with distrust, has to do with dealing with the evilest of evil, people then look at this as, okay, what do we do to get on top of it, to keep people from falling into these positions? And then you have bureaucrats deciding that maybe they know best what people ought to be thinking.
Well, they call it full-spectrum dominance. They say the truth must be guarded by a bodyguard of lies. They fill every vacuum of possible evil in the name of full-spectrum dominance, but they have now become evil. They have not defeated all the avenues of other evil by filling every criminal spectrum.
Right. It's like the war on terror is supposed to reestablish freedom. We got the most oppressed, surveyed society ever.
Exactly. Stay there. Analyzing the enemy attack profile, though, it's completely premeditated. We'll be right back.
Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. He's Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network. And now, live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
I tell you, I think during the breaks, a lot of times it's even better radio than on air with these guests. I mean, I'm just as intrigued and excited as you are, even more so. Constant discussions with my guests during the breaks. But it is the breaks that allow us, in this system to get the energy cubes we need to be on air and, finance this whole thing. So it is symbiotic, and we appreciate all of our sponsors. But I was bringing up the fact, really asking Dr. Begich to judge who I am, because it's always good to have outside perspectives. And I said, well, I really am fearless, but it's because I know I've got to do this because it's the right direction, and that we are basically going down the wrong road if I don't. So it's not a thing of courage fighting corruption. It's something I've got to do, like a tropism, something that's just ingrained in me. But sometimes it comes off like fear. For me, if my neighbor's house is on fire and I call them and say, wake up, your house is on fire, that's not fear. That's taking action.
Right.
And Dr. Begich agreed with me. I mean, what's your view on yourself and what you do, what I'm doing?
Yeah, I think that's true. And each of us have a gift, and when we recognize the gift and begin to work within it, it doesn't create fear. It creates the opposite: confidence, a sense of a purpose, because you are doing what you're talented and good at. And that's, again, for the rest of the public out there. Each of us have those gifts, and we all have a sphere of influence, whether it's our families and friends or a radio audience. But when you're working within your gifts and within that realm, you don't experience fear. As an individual, I don't. I know you don't, Alex, and it's because we're doing what we know we can do, what we're capable of doing. We know we're not alone. We're being assisted in lots of different ways, but we move forward in that knowledge safely and confidently and without fear. If you're experiencing fear and worry as you engage a conflict, perhaps you need to pull back a little bit and analyze whether it's you that should engage this conflict, or whether you should hand the baton to another, or whether it's the right time. Ask yourself. Those things are normal emotions to tell us, hey, be careful, be cautious. If you plow through them, you have a lot of risk. And I don't think we're ever put into a battle that we're not equipped to fight, but we have to know that going into the battle. So each one that we each individually pick becomes incredibly important. And
yeah, if you are hearing a danger, Will Robinson, back off, ease back. I mean, my problem, Dr. Begich, is I never hear the Danger Will Robinson. It's just full speed ahead.
But, occasionally, and I got to say this, occasionally, though, Alex, and I know you do this as well as I do, you'll be in the course of your work, you'll run into someone that you just have that sinking bad feeling about.
Yes.
And you just go, well, I don't know why, I don't know how, but I'm just going to ignore this situation or avoid this individual. And then, 6 months rolls by and you figure out why. Well, I think that's important. And so it's not really fear as much as it is awareness, again, of what's around you and what can come against you and whose interest you're opposing, because people like to keep their self-interest preserved. And when you're stepping on toes, as we are, you excite some people. But, I look at it this way. That's great. That means it's working. When they start hammering on you, it's working. And you can look at the work we've done over the years, and it does make its way in. In a number of the technical reports dealing with personal privacy issues, Earth Pulse and the work that we've done is cited there because it's quality material. The stuff that we do to alert the public and stimulate activity is just that, stimulating activity. But the listeners, people who hear these words and act on them, do things that we could never do. And people go, well, I'm just this little guy doing this little thing. Well, you don't know. A guy walking down the street, just as simple as a smile to the guy walking the other way. And the guy walking the other way maybe gets that bit of encouragement and goes off and creates some great invention. Now, who is the stimulator of that invention? The guy who invented it or the guy who acted as the catalyst by a little human compassion? I think the guy who acted as the catalyst, and each of us is a catalyst of change.
Well, it's the listeners of this broadcast that make it so incredibly powerful and dangerous to the globalist paradigm. We're going to come back and take phone calls. This has been one of the most amazing interviews ever with Dr. Nick Begich. The awakening, the quickening is accelerating. You can all feel it.
He's the T-Rex of political talk. Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network.
Dr. Nick Begich is our guest for the rest of this segment. Then I got a bunch of news and your calls we'll be getting into. John, Mark, Bill, Donna, we'll get to at least you for Dr. Nick Begich here in a moment. But he said something that really struck home for me that I've been really focusing on lately, and that's that we're not alone. There are billions of people on this planet who are now awake. And Zbigniew Brzezinski, earlier last year, he bemoaned that it doesn't mean people have all the answers, but they're now awakening and shattering the tiny little cave that they've been put into, and that we stand not just with those that are alive, but literally with all other truth seekers and lovers of liberty throughout history, and that's the most valuable thing in the world. It's the only thing that's going to fulfilling your destiny and being a good person.
I'm totally with you, and I think all of us, again, I want to emphasize, that some of the most profound things in my life have been triggered by people who think themselves insignificant. And, man, I just can't say it enough, is we beat ourselves up pretty thoroughly, pretty regularly, because we're sort of the worst critics of ourselves. But cut yourself just a little bit of slack, and if you know your problems, try and overcome them. But more importantly, take control of the things you can take control of, and that's where you start to build your confidence back. On these issues, if somebody asked you or me years ago when we began our work, and it laid out for us the path we would have traveled, we would have looked at them like they were absolutely out of their minds. And yet, by stepping into what we could do, we discovered all these other things that we could do. And I think that's the true nature of this experience. And, the backdrop of technologies and the evil in the world that so much of what we've had to talk about